bring candidates to the Board of Ed for the superintendency. Our job is to make sure to bring the best candidates possible. The decision for who will be the superintendent is, of course, up to the Board of Education, but our job is to help them to bring the best possible candidates here. Just a little bit about me. I was a superintendent for 10 years in New Jersey before I retired, principal about a decade before that, and teacher before of social studies, just like Mr. Stewart. And one of the things I loved most about my job as a superintendent was finding the right people to fill the right positions in the district. And so that's why in retirement this is such a wonderful job for me, because this is what I get to do full-time. So what the Board of Education has asked us to do is to bring them candidates who reflect the values of the community. And the only way to do that is to talk to members of the community and the staff. What we're doing all week, we've been here since Monday, my partner and I, is talk to different groups and individuals to collect information on who would be what type of person, what type of skill set would be necessary to be a successful superintendent here in Indian River, and also in order to start to prioritize some of the needs of the district, that according to the view of the community. We will present all the information we gathered. We gather this information. It is definitely qualitative research. It's not scientific in the sense that we put all the ideas into themes. We create what is called a leadership profile. We present that leadership profile to the board. And then we use that leadership profile when we're recruiting candidates as a snapshot of the district as far as what the district needs and the values of the community are. And also, when people apply, they will automatically receive a copy of this leadership profile so they know a little bit more about the position. So we are very grateful that the Board of Education here in Indian River has allowed us the opportunity. We've been here, like I said, a week to talk to many different individuals and groups. But if someone could not make one of our sessions, they are invited to either email me directly, which Brandon, our media expert, has put my email under this for the live streaming, or we actually would love to see many, many people participate in our survey online, which is on the district website, and we encourage all who are interested to take that survey. Now, it is more scientifically developed as a quantitative study, but what it does is it helps us to see what the priorities are for the new superintendent based on common characteristics of successful superintendents. So we do encourage everyone to come in and take that survey. The more information we know, the better we can find a good fit for the community. Yes? It is anonymous, but what you do, you're asked to identify yourself within a subgroup, like a community member, a parent, a staff member, but no names are used. Thank you for asking that. And we do encourage as many people as possible to participate in that. Now, typically at all of our focus groups and during our interviews with individuals, we ask 4 questions. I'm going to tell you all 4 questions. You don't have to answer them in order, and Nancy has been my right hand all week taking notes. This one's recorded, but to take notes because we like to make sure we get information on the same 4 questions. And they are, what are the strengths of the district, and what would we like to see the new superintendent sustain as successful efforts in the district? The second question is really a flip side to that, and it's what are the challenges that the district is facing, the district is facing, both short and long term. And the third question is, what are the personal or professional characteristics that you'd like to see in a new superintendent? And the fourth question is, do you have anyone who you could recommend for the superintendency? Anyone who is recommended for the superintendency during one of our focus group sessions will be contacted and invited to apply. So that's one way we find some really good people in some of our searches, is from people that community members or staff members already know. And we make sure to invite all of them. So to start, we don't need to go through the questions in order, but Nancy will make sure they get organized, all of your comments get organized into the right area so we can continue to gather data.
I just want to make something known, so you know.
Okay.
Actually, newspaper report. But I had a son who was enrolled in the school district.
Oh,
so
good.
Vested interest.
So you're a community member too and a parent. There we go. You're welcome.
I'm gonna play double duty here because
Sure.
I think, hey, I'm a community member. I have some ideas. Probably some of them have already been, you've heard a million times already,
But that helps us get our themes.
Sure.
So I would love to hear them, and I want to give everyone here an opportunity to talk.
so I'm going to participate in this.
Great.
Just-
Welcome.
Thank you.
Would anyone like to talk about strengths that they have in the community? Do we have a third microphone? We might be able to just give
You say the strengths that we
Oh.
have in the community?
the strengths that are here already.
Just make sure you speak into the microphone.
Sure, sure.
Thank you.
And I do appreciate, I know this isn't as conducive
Yeah,
to open conversation, but trust me, I think it's important.
Well, as I told you that, I've been here all my life. I've been here since 1949. I have had 6 kids to graduate from this district. And I have 2 that are enrolled now in 7th grade at Storm Grove. And I would assume that the strength that I can identify that if kids are equipped with the right type personality and perhaps maybe ideal kind of like parenting, that they can graduate and become successful.
So they're ready.
Yeah.
Or work or
one
college.
One of my kids is an attorney. I have another one that is, his next promotion, he will be vice president of FedEx. I have a daughter that is in Atlanta, and she and her husband are in real estate, and they have a catering service. I have one that's in prison. But yet I say that they all were able to get an education simply because as parents, we stress the importance.
The value.
Me being born here and reared here, I realized that my parent taught me that the only way that I would have a chance is to get an education.
The
They
opportunity.
instill that within me. My concern is for those that don't have that background, don't have that solid
Support.
support, exactly. And I've seen some things with this district that really makes me want to regurgitate.
And are these things that the new superintendent will need to address?
Yes, most definitely.
So please
For instance,
share them with me.
right now, did you know that this district is under a 52-year
Deseg.
desegregation?
Yes,
order?
I do.
Now, to me, now that is unheard of. I mean, and I find that almost.
Yes.
Yeah, and did you also know that the last 3 years they spent close to $3 million to fight this desegregation order?
I didn't know the exact,
But you know it was astronomical.
I know that it's been,
Quite a bit. Now, did you know that they also, in that frame of time, spent around $31,000 to recruit teachers? You did know that?
no, I didn't know the exact number, but it
Okay.
is important to
So,
include a great staff.
so from that alone, I mean, wouldn't that send a message if we've been in a battle with the deseg order, which is clearly defined its purpose as ensuring equity in education among all students. If I don't want equity in education and I fight that, where does that place me? What position does it place me as a district as far as all children?
Well, Anthony, or Mr. Stewart, thank you for bringing that up. But what I'm going to take from that is I'm trying to figure out what are the characteristics of a superintendent that you need? And what I'm understanding, and please tell me if I'm wrong, is that you need a superintendent who has had experience with equity issues and who will address these head-on when they arrive in the district. Is that correct?
Yes, and I think he needs to be one who is aware of the cultural differences in people enough to be able to have done some type of consideration,
experience, right.
some type of research. Now, there's a question I asked the school board once. I asked them how many of them was familiar with Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu. And not a one could tell me who he was. Now, I can assure you that there is not a person that has done more in the field of education and writing about black kids than Jawanza Kunjufu. You can go online and find he have written more books. How can you understand me or what I'm all about if you are not willing to do what you force me to do, research on whatever history that you're teaching, you social studies? I mean, we had to take quite a bit.
Absolutely. And I think it's very important, what I'm hearing you say as a concern is that this continue to be at the forefront of attention of the new superintendent in making recommendations to improve the equity situation in the district. And there are candidates out there who have focused on that, whether it be in their own research as they've come up through their own schooling, the formal research, or they could have experience in managing equity situations that involve inequities, and we will be looking for both.
Well, now, would they have experience that they can bring to the table to show that they operated in an area that had a large number, that prior to them getting there may have had some racial tensions and
Right.
because there's going to be racial tension here.
Okay.
I can assure you. I mean, even with the Confederate flag and some of the groups they got, these hate groups and things, we got to bear in mind where we are located. J.R. Alderman lived in White City, who was the president of he was the Grand Dragon at one time of the Ku Klux Klan. And I can remember, I taught school at Southern Oaks, and I can remember on Saturdays, if I had to go to the school, seeing this, and I'm talking about this was like in 2000, 99,
Okay. so
seeing
not that
Ku
long
Klux
ago.
Klan rallies at White City Park. So we're he's coming into a district wherein, realistically speaking, there are racial tensions here
Okay.
everywhere, just about, in every institution.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That will be something that, as we're talking to the candidates, screening them for their experiences, something that we would definitely look for. Someone who's had experience not only dealing with some type of racial tensions, but what they've done to improve the situation where they are. Now, I will tell you, not all of our candidates will have been superintendents. Some might be assistant superintendents or some other role in the district, but we can still ask them questions about what role they played in improving relations between different groups. Some may not be from areas where there was racial tension. It may be a cultural issue, but we will be looking for people who have managed tensions that can divide a community and how they brought community members together around a cause, and in our case, that cause is what's best for children in education. And we'll be looking for that, absolutely.
So will those questions and answers be published so that we can see those questions and answers?
Any candidate who's interviewed by the Board of Education will absolutely be published, but everyone who applies, we will reach out to them to get a good idea if they are a good fit to be interviewed. So we'll make those recommendations based on those conversations.
Because I know that the board was advised that they should interview separately, and I don't agree with that, because them interviewing the candidates separately kind of goes around sunshine law, and it leaves the public out as to what was asked, how those questions were answered, And since we've had such a chaotic history with superintendents in the past, I think it's very important for our community to be involved, especially
In the
since
interview.
yeah.
If I could just back up for one minute. Florida is different from most states with the sunshine laws. And typically, it's been my experience as an executive recruiter that the best candidates are sitting superintendents who are doing well in their jobs and have earned the trust of their boards and their community. It is precisely those people who don't want their names listed as candidates because then they lose credibility if it becomes public. In most of the country, we can discuss these things without, we can recruit without it being public. So having said that, I don't know about what the board can do, has decided to do and not to do. I am aware that in Florida, those applications and all of the discussion around them is public, and we will honor those rules. And I'm talking to you now as the recruiter. It's sometimes, I'll be frank with you, it is difficult to get people to apply for the jobs just for the reasons that you're describing. So from my perspective, I am trying to find the absolute best people who are willing to put their names, and some are. Don't get me wrong, this is a wonderful community. I've had the great fortune, my partner and I have been here an entire week. We've talked to many groups, many individuals. We are seeing common themes as far as priorities, as people who have certain experiences who we'd like to recommend them to the board. It will be up to the board to decide who they interview, and those interviews will be held in public according to law. That's my understanding.
Okay.
But my role is a little bit different from what you're asking, so I want to make sure, I don't want to give you any incorrect information.
That, I guess, you're from the consulting firm?
I am from the consulting.
Someone from the consulting firm had spoken to them and said that they could interview individually. Okay.
But my understanding is, they're still going to interview the candidates in public. So you're still going to see all that. But some of the board members wanted to, say, oh, I want to ask, there's some other questions I want to ask that maybe I won't have time for during the interviews. I want to gather a little more information before the interviews. And to prevent that kind of chaotic, where you have 5 board members calling each board member and asking questions. What he was talking about was trying to set up something, some kind of organized way of saying, okay, we can give each of you, an hour or whatever time to ask those extra questions. If they want to say, well, what does this mean? And not major questions, but what does this mean on your resume? So to clarify things. But the interviews themselves with each candidate would be done in public.
See, because I would even like to hear that.
And I'm so sorry, but I know Kristen is our public, is for the district, so I think she's going to have the official.
Yeah.
I'm working on that other side, so yes.
So we added something to the superintendent search page just a week ago, it was, the HYA portal. And that was the concern from the community at first, that they wouldn't be able to see what was going on between HYA and the board members. And so in order to be transparent, because the board recognized that, we added a link to the portal onto our superintendent search page. So all of the documents, the timelines, contracts, anything like that, and the final group of candidates that will be presented to the board, their information, that will all be available on the HYA portal so that everyone has access to it.
So any communication between board members and our firm will be memorialized there and open. Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
And by the way, I'm Monica Brown with the
Okay,
firm.
I'm Rashawn Green.
Nice to meet you,
Nice to
Rashawn. We're
meet
such a small group, but it
Yeah.
seems really formal, but please, we're sharing a microphone.
So to piggyback off what he was saying with diversity and inclusion, I'm actually the chairperson of the equity committee that we currently have in place. And
For the district?
For the
Okay,
district.
thank you.
Yeah, and so we're just really concerned with having someone that's going to be transparent. So what I've experienced in this whole process is a lack of data. Like, we're there to monitor the district's progress with.
This is for the DSEG.
For the DSEG, and this year, we haven't been able to monitor anything. We haven't really gotten the data we needed in order to say, yes, they're complying.
Okay.
You know, so we're just hoping that we find a superintendent that will be transparent, that will make sure public requests are honored, record requests are honored. Because even not just with our committee, but with citizens, there are citizens that ask for data, they say there's no record available, or they get it 3-4 months later after they've gotten a record from someone else, not through the public records. And then they're
Okay.
like, hey, listen, this document is available because I got it through
Okay.
another avenue. And so that's a concern for us, just.
So you're saying that the new superintendent, one of the qualities you would appreciate in a new superintendent is that he or she is transparent, open to requests, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is a good communicator with the different groups, so maybe as to answer those questions before it has to be 3 or 4 months.
Yes.
So communication, transparency, and an open dialogue.
Right,
Okay.
right. So we know that he's not going to be the one honoring a public records request, but we also know that the superintendent influences the climate of our district, and we're hoping to change that climate to a more transparent and integrity-driven environment.
And it's interesting that you say that, because that has been a theme that we've heard throughout the week. The transparency, definitely, but improving the overall climate and culture of the district is a common theme. And one of the, it is an area of educational research that has been researched a great deal.
Yeah.
There have been many studies on climate and culture and how to improve climate and culture, make it a healthier environment for learning, for the students, for the staff, and for the community members. And we have heard clearly that the new superintendent, he or she, will need to be an expert in that area in order to improve the climate and culture of the schools, that is a priority. And those are the types of questions that, or the type of people we'll be looking for who have an experience, whether it be research experience and/or experience improving a climate, and can document that for us in another place. So that's what we'll be looking for.
And to add to what Ms. Green was saying, one of the things in the last equity committee meeting was pointed out that we've been pleased at the interim superintendent, Dr. Moxley's willingness to really come forward and make things better. One of the first things she did as the interim superintendent, she came in and went to each department and said, this is a priority for the district. You need to cooperate with them. And that has, I think that has shown, that has gotten some
Right.
improvement. And that's what I'm looking for in a superintendent who sometimes has to go against the grain and say, and be willing to say, we need to do this.
And I'm hearing you say that you need a superintendent who has the courage to take on the issues
Yeah.
at hand. And I have heard that as a theme all week, so you are reiterating that. I also have heard quite clearly that the initiatives and the personality, professional characteristics, both personal and professional characteristics, that Dr. Moxley has brought to the superintendent's position here is something that needs to be emulated in whoever takes the permanent job, because it has been successful so far. So I just need to say that from my personal experience working with Dr. Moxley, setting up all these meetings, she is an expert at her job, but she's also very helpful. She has made sure that extra meetings are called,
Yes.
more emails go out, that our survey is put in more places. So she is doing not only a wonderful job here that I'm hearing, because I've heard from many groups, can you just get a Dr. Moxley clone? So I hear you.
So she doesn't.
She's an interim superintendent, so she's a retired superintendent, so she is not applying for the position. But what she is doing, and this is, I think, vital, and I'm not sure if you don't work in schools, this would be clear, but she is setting the district up in a place where a new person can come in and hit the ground running. She is planning to help with the transition. So this isn't someone who's taking a position and the person's gone and they can't find out anything about what's happening. They have to kind of learn on their own. Dr. Moxley is openly and actively setting up the new superintendent, whomever he or she shall be, with the climate or the ability to hit the ground running. She is going to be available and part of the transition process, and she's going to make sure, she's invested in making sure that that new person is successful. And quite honestly, that makes this position more attractive to candidates, that they are going to have someone like Dr. Moxley, and in this case, Dr. Moxley, who's going to
One
help.
of the things I wanted to add before I hand this over to Anthony is you talk about qualities looking for in a superintendent.
Absolutely.
I'm going to be real blunt. I think it's time this district got a person of color to run the school district, a person of color who is not just a person of color, but a person of color who understands the issues, the challenges facing particularly the African American community, and knows also how to collaborate and work and motivate the white
All
community.
people, right.
You know, but has a firm understanding of the issues that this district faces, particularly when it comes to issues of diversity, I want to use a word that I don't understand, I don't know how to use, but making,
Okay.
but really somebody who knows how to bridge that gap
Absolutely.
between achievement between African Americans and I look at, as a Latino, I look at Latino gap, but then when I look at African Americans lagging even farther behind, there's a problem there, and we need someone who understands why. And
Investigates
yeah,
further,
and it's
okay.
not just a matter of adding new programs, because we have some wonderful programs in this school district, but sometimes we're sticking students in that aren't ready for those programs, or we're sticking them in there, and we're setting them up to fail. And I'm stealing that from you, I'm sorry.
Well, and if I just may, first of all, thank you for that comment, and we will, what I've been very impressed with this Board of Education too is they approve our process, and one of the things they do is approve where this position is advertised and for how long. And this Board of Education is not only advertising in the traditional ways, we are also advertising, I'm not going to get the names exactly right for the record, but there are groups of Latino and African American educators, and we are actively advertising within their publications. I would have to look up the exact name, and I can get that for you if you're reporting this. But we are recruiting, and this Board of Education made that a goal for us to recruit differently in addition to what is typically done in order to make sure that our efforts are seen by different groups of educators around the country.
I'd like to say a couple of things. I've kind of waited real patiently, and,
I'm
you know, but
I'll wait here as long as you need me.
I'm 52 years or so. But anyway, I was at the meeting, the equity meeting also, and I did hear the issue about transparency. But what I also heard was too that the outgoing superintendent had kept things away from the district, and that the superintendent and the president of the local NAACP was in a courtroom wherein they both agreed to put some kind of gag order, that there was some information that they didn't want the public to have. I don't know, did you pick up on that?
That was during the mediation, so I guess there was a gag order in place during the mediation.
During the
that-
process?
Yeah, that it wouldn't be discussed.
But I can't conceive of how we taxpayers have public servants in positions that are doing things secretly regardless, especially now when it comes to the rights of our children and the rights of us as people.
Okay, so just off of what he's saying, that's another thing that I would be concerned with too, the incoming superintendent allowing the board to be in that room when it happens. So during that litigation, the mediation, board members were not allowed, well, they had the authority to be there, but they had been advised by the superintendent to let the superintendent handle it. So even though it's the board that's the subject of the mediation, the school district superintendent was the one that was a part of the mediation, and the board received information after the fact. And there was one board member that actually wanted to be there, and the superintendent wasn't willingly giving her that information for the call-in times of the mediation. And there was just a lot of different things that we felt like the board members should have had more access and should have been there. What he's saying with the part of just the public not being able.
Having knowledge of it. I mean, once again, you're taking our tax dollars and you making decisions about our kids, and you're gonna tell me you're gonna keep this a secret? I don't think so.
You know, Anthony, I hear you. I don't have the authority to speak for the district on that
Sure,
part.
I know.
But what I can tell you is that all of the candidates for this position will be fully briefed on the issues that have happened. And I can predict that the Board of Education is going to be asking them questions about how they will handle this ongoing issue in
When you say Board of Education, you mean?
the school
Huh?
board. They interview.
See, now, that's a different color horse. Now, again, we're talking about a school board who has alleged that the outgoing superintendent kept information from them, and yet I have a copy of Hush Blackwell's contract, which says that he was hired specifically to deal with the issue of the Desegregation Act. So they had to know that that this man was paying this enormous amount of money to this law firm to keep that Desegregation Act from being enforced. And this is apparently not only, and this is why, again, I hear all the praises for Dr. Moxie. Maybe she didn't have her hand in doing some of the other things, but I have not yet, I've gone to the committee, I have yet to see the school board come up with a detailed plan on how they intend to comply with this Desegregation Act. They have not, they've sit up there and filibustered day after day, refused to give you information. I've gone for information from the school board. They charged me $102.76 for 3 pages. I have that on proof. I have it with me. I have my canceled checks, and I have the receipt that they gave me in the name of a guy by the name of Anthony Taylor. So once again, we're talking about, this is not happened accident. Ma'am, I'm not talking something that I heard people say. I've been here, in December I'll be here 70 years, 70 whole years. And I've seen this board, and I've seen this time and time again. So I want to know, we need somebody that is going to be knowledgeable, first of all, of the differences. We need someone who is willing to make a change at all costs. And I don't, once again, I've been here so long that I'm not even sure it's possible with the people we got in place and with this present condition of this county. This county, Indian River County, is a county that's different than any other county on the east coast of Florida as far as race relation and thing. Many of us, I didn't retire here, I retired in St. Lucie County. Many of the teachers here has to leave here and go where they can work, St. Lucie, Brevard County. That's a reality. I'm not cutting the chase or nothing, and we need somebody gonna deal with these kind of problems.
So, okay, so then the question would be, with your concerns, how does she, as a recruiter, because we have to remember that she's just a recruiter. You know, a lot of what you're saying, we need to be saying that to the board. Like, when you're asking these candidates questions, this way we need you to decide. She's just reeling in candidates.
But I'm trying to make her aware of the board too, because it is the board. The board is not, you cannot, they are not innocent of all this mess that has been going on, not just this board, but the boards all the way from 1967, how all of them has fought this thing. And the person that you're bringing in now, in reality, I love what the brother said, but if you brought a brother in here, you'd probably chop his head off. Do you understand what I'm saying? In reality, this is what would happen with this county and what goes on here. In reality, the problem, I've heard you mention it, even if we got people into the system, right now we're about 114 black teachers short according to the 1994 desegregation order. And if they brought them in, if whoever superintendent does not know how to bring in training for the principals and assistant principals on this issue, you aren't going to do us no good at all. And in a few years, we'll be right back where we was before.
And that's our goal, Mr. Stewart, is to make sure we're bringing you someone who has the capacity, who has the experience to handle these issues. I do hear you that not only following the spirit and the details of the deseg order is important. I understand that, and we will be looking for people who've had experience. I have to tell you, maybe not with desegregation orders, but with bringing groups of people in a community together to support education. And whether that means the recruiting efforts need to change, the training of staff needs to change, all of those things will be looked at as far as qualities that we need to find in a new superintendent.
And we would like, to piggyback off of Frederica, we would like to see black candidates. Like, that would be awesome to see qualified black candidates interviewing from here. And from there, Mr. Stewart, that's when we hold the board accountable. Like, hey, we have qualified black candidates here who understand these issues because they've probably experienced some of what our students are going through, our teachers are going through, and they can help with the training for diversity and inclusion and training the climate to a more inclusive culture. So
I would love to see that too, but I wouldn't want to set someone up like you were talking about to really fail. You and I know. I mean, listen. I have in my possession an emoji that was sent from the chairman of the school board, and it's emoji of flying batshit that she sent to me when I found out. Oh, well, yes, I got that. I recorded that. Believe that. I'm saving that. Didn't I show it to you? You did. Okay. And once again, this is when I found out that they were lying about why they took the 17% out of the desegregation order. They said that there was statute. I asked her. She said it was a statute that would not allow them to put it in. I called DeAgretta, the attorney, the attorney. She told me there was not a statute, that they was acting off a court ruling. I say, does a court ruling supersede or overrule a federal court order? She said, no, by no means. I said, well, why is it out then? I don't understand. And I still don't understand. I haven't gotten an explanation for that yet.
And Mr. Stewart, you won't get that from me because I don't work
I don't
for the
expect
district.
to, I know.
But I will tell you that, and I appreciate what everyone's saying, and we're taking down the notes. We are looking for the best person. We are doing our recruiting we're casting the net as widely as we can to make sure we find a person. And for many of the groups I've talked to this week, the idea about improving culture and climate in the schools and bringing different groups together, that has been something we've heard from many, many groups. And it's something that we will be concentrating on. And again, we're not only going to look for someone who can talk about the research in those areas, but someone who's had experience and can show us where in their past they've done that work and where they've been successful. So I can absolutely promise you that will be part of our process.
One word I'm concerned about that, and I don't think that you mean it as a concerning words, but it always concerns me when I hear people say we're looking for the best persons with the best qualifications, because I question how
that's
that's
determined.
done, because a lot of times those guidelines or structures are set up in a European-based guideline, and so it's not an even. We're comparing apples and cherries, I don't know.
I hear your concerns.
And so,
but yes.
and you're a pro, so you know this, but I felt I needed to express that.
And thank you for saying that. I will say, though, in research and practice, we will be looking for candidates who, and like I said, maybe not a desegregation order, because that isn't, quite frankly, that's not common. That's not a common experience to have been dealt with. But we will be asking the tough questions of these candidates about where in their experience have they had situations, not exactly the same as what's happening here in Indian River, but similar enough to show us how they could use transparency, build relationships with groups and individuals, and with their board members to make sure that problems are solved and people move forward.
See, like for me, I feel like it's very important that we get a candidate that comes from a culturally diverse district, because a candidate from St. John's is not going to be able to attack the issues that we have here. We have cultural issues and diversity issues and inclusion issues. So, like, even with qualifications, I feel like that's at the top, because we have, like he said, 52 years we've been dealing with the same thing. So the first thing is to get that kind of accomplished, and then there's transparency and everything. But
Can I pivot back to what we originally started at the meeting?
Remind me.
Oh, that was, we were going to talk about the strengths of the district.
Right, strengths of the district.
I wanted to mention a couple things. One, I think we have some incredibly awesome programs for our students here. And the challenge is to make sure that students are prepared and more students have the opportunity to take advantage of those programs. But we have the programs here, and we should be extremely proud of that. And so that's one of them. I think our greatest, I'm always going to say this, but I think our greatest asset is our diversity. It can be. I love it because we can talk about different things, different issues. And as you said, somebody needs to be well-versed in more than just one issue if we're going to get a superintendent. So again, diversity can be, and I think still is, one of our greatest assets. I've seen this district, not always willingly in good situations, but it has the ability to adapt quickly and respond quickly to emergencies, to changes. And I'll give you an example of that, and again, I'll just keep on stroking Dr. Moxley's ego, but she came in here and she said, okay, now we want a different culture here, or these need to be our priorities now, or we need to do this first, because she came in at crunch time.
Prioritize.
And our staff, who are exceptional, have the skills to be able to say, change direction, say, okay, we better get this. And under some extreme pressure, they put down a pretty darn good job
Thank you for saying.
of responding to that. So those are, and of course, we have parents who care. I wish parents would get more involved. But I think most districts have that thing.
Exactly. That is a common.
But you do have parents, even if it's the parent who comes into school and say, darn it, my student, you're not treating my student right. I love that passion, because they cared enough to show up. And we have them.
You do.
We
And
have
that
them.
you have parents who care, community members who care. I was fortunate to talk to about 30 of your students
Yeah.
together, and I was amazed at how they were able to, through their own lens, which is as a student, but accurately reflect many of the themes that we're hearing from the adults in the room. And that is about transparency and culture, and we want teachers who are excited to be teaching.
I was gonna say,
and
don't-
that's
yeah,
all
yeah.
about, but we heard it from them too. So one of the really great things I think I can say about this past week is that the themes are very clear about what is needed Here, there, you know, the parents aren't saying one thing and the students saying another and the school board saying a third thing. Really, we are looking for someone who will bring people together, who can motivate, who are the person who is able to understand the data and prioritize the issues based on the current situation, and who can really get people behind them in a plan for improvement. And we're hearing that across the board. So again, I thank you for talking about the programs too, because one of the things the students said was they loved how many opportunities they had here, which is great. But they too wished everybody knew about all those opportunities. So again, you know, I'm smiling because I'm hearing the same things, and that's really good for me as the recruiter, because then I can tell the people who apply what's important here in Indian River.
Ms. Brown, also, I want to make, I really think we need to know that Dr. Moxie made a statement in the paper yesterday, and the way I interpreted it is that she's really not interested in being full-time superintendent, that she made it pretty plain that she was interim, and she's here only temporarily. And I have not found as much to rant and rave about, maybe as some other people, about the presence, because I have not, just as she openly made that statement, I have not seen an open statement that dealing with the board actually attempting to detail any type of way to either follow the desegregation order. I keep going back there because I've been affected by
hear
this
you.
thing here.
I
And this
hear
thing here is been there for 52 years, and I doubt very seriously I'll be able in 2 hours or an hour to explain the effect that it has had on me and my kids and the kids in my community. I've not seen anything addressed in that area from her yet.
No money to the budget.
No money is not at all. Now, see, once again, we've acknowledged we done spent $3 million to fight it. But I have not seen not $1 allocated as to how I'm going to close the educational gap, how I'm going to recruit and make a lucrative effort to bring in minority black teachers. Nothing, not one word. So I'm not as much on the Moxie bandwagon
I hear
as
you.
anybody else.
I hear you.
And before I do it, because I want to say, now, were you the one, you all weren't the agency that brought in the last superintendent, were you?
No, we weren't.
Okay, thank God for that. Now, but I did hear some things about your agency and about some of the negative things that has happened with you all. And I'm going to tell you in the front, I ain't going to get out the door and say things behind your back. As a matter of fact, it was in the newspaper.
It was.
Yes,
It was.
that
And
you all had brought people in, different things that maybe had been accused of crimes, et cetera, and things of that magnitude. I would be very much interested in knowing as to what insurance that we have that this type of person won't end up here too.
Okay, so there's a couple layers there. The first, I wasn't involved in any of those cases that were cited in the newspaper, nor was my partner, and he and I are the primary people working on this search. So to address those searches directly is difficult because I didn't participate. But I can tell you that we do many, many searches. We look at all the candidates who apply, and we try to make our best effort to recommend for interview, because the Board of Education decides on who is the superintendent, but we try to make that match. We have, and your board has agreed to an extensive criminal and background check that will be done as part of our process. That is new to our company over the last several years in order to address some of the issues. Can we absolutely guarantee you that a person won't make a bad decision in the future? We cannot. But we can make sure that the people who are the final candidates, prior to making the decision, the board members will have as much knowledge as humanly possible about their background to make sure that that type of adverse situation does not occur.
Now, let me ask you, now, as far as doing the background, because I've had this problem within the local churches, in selecting pastors.
So you
When
understand that
You
difficulty.
get a pastor, and he give you a resume, and you check his resume, you check out where church he was at. But for some reason, you don't go and interview any of the parishioners. You don't interview any of his congregation whatsoever as to what nature of the person that you're dealing with. And, strictly, I'm very kind of versed a little bit in the Bible. I know that one of the criteria for selecting a deacon, the first criteria, is a person of honest report. But most people ignore that one and go to the one that says full of the Holy Ghost. And this is a lot of time the way in which a person perceives a person. But if you deal with that one criteria of honest report, in order to get an honest report, you got to get that from people. Someone has to give you a report as to whether this person is honest or not. You won't get that on paper, I promise you that.
Right.
You won't
And-
get that from his school. No.
Right.
So are you asking, are they just going by his references, or are they freelancing and going to talk to people that he's actually worked with? That he
Yes.
didn't list?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, first of all, he or she must provide certain references as part of their application process. We definitely check those. But obviously, that person has chosen the references for a reason, because they will say good things. I wouldn't ask you to be my reference if you weren't going to say good things about me. So we go beyond that. We of course, do internet searches. We, of course, if the person is a viable candidate and we see them moving through the process, we go even deeper from the recruiting end and talk to people they've worked with. That your board expects that of us, okay? That's what they expect. However, your board has decided to go even further and do criminal, social media, and an extensive, even credit background check. We use a firm called Baker Eubanks, and your board has decided to engage that agency in doing a full and an entire background check on the person, or persons, the finalists, before a decision is made.
So that eliminates your suggestion. If they're going to do a credit background check, no, I'm just kidding, that was the joke.
Well, I can tell you, I don't know a lot about what they do, but I can tell you that our history with them has been pretty good in order to address some of those issues that you described earlier. So as any good organization does, you get feedback, you make changes, and you make changes for the better. Now, I will tell you that your board had a decision to make. They could rely on us to do the background check, or they could rely on us and add an extra piece of insurance by this agency that's all they do. And they chose the extra. So I am impressed with this Board of Education on the amount of effort they want to make sure that the candidate does have a clean record. Now, having said that, if I could back up a little bit and address more to that nature. I've done several searches, and I've worked with candidates. And most effective sitting superintendents have had controversy in their districts, where they are hung out to dry by the media or by certain special interest groups. So part of our job is to not necessarily disqualify a person because of a controversial issue, because if they are courageous enough to bring things to the forefront and make tough decisions, it is likely that they have made someone or some group angry. Okay, so it's our job, as we're recommending to the board, to say, yeah, there was some trouble around this issue, and this is the courageous decision that was made that showed this person's integrity, but they may have been hung out to dry for it. So again, I'm just adding to what you're saying with, we make sure to tell the Board of Education about any controversial issues in which the candidates have been involved in, and then they decide, is that controversy so great that that disqualifies them from the candidacy, or is this something that showed their integrity and showed how courageous they could be, and that we say, even though you were involved in that controversial decision, we still want you as part of our district. So that's part of what we provide to the Board of Education too. But the reason I'm telling you that is because some of our greatest leaders, school leaders, have had to make those tough decisions. The teachers might not like it, or a special interest groups might not like it. And with social media, it could be an individual who doesn't like it and makes an issue of it. But that's part of our job too, is to make sure the board has that background. Because if you're looking for someone with experience, especially in some of the areas that we've been talking about, chances are they've made some people angry along the way. I had my mentor tell me, she was a long-standing superintendent, every major decision you make as a superintendent alienates a certain group of people. And you just have to trust that your board and your community knows that you're making those decisions, even if they're tough, in the best interest of the children. And that's what you have to concentrate on. So when you're talking about background checks, we may bring a candidate to the board who had a difficult time in a district. And that, in my opinion, is up to the board to decide if that difficult situation still makes them a viable candidate or not. So I just wanted to add that to the
Well, I
part.
think I would be more or less interested in the overall demographics of the makeup of the district he come from, as to, credit him as far as, yeah.
Well, we do look at that, but we also, based on the criteria that's described by you and by other community groups, as far as a priority in our recruiting. But that would be absolutely a question we would ask and we would investigate ourselves.
Maybe I'm biased because I'm actually on the committee and was a part of the community that's been affected by this DSEG order, but I think that is the biggest blemish on our district as a whole. Because when I go to other places and I talk about, like, that we're under DSEG, you're looking at the civil rights from 1965, and here we are still 64 and still, dealing with these type of issues.
Right. And then, it was 54 when the
Brown versus the
versus
Board of
Ed.
Education.
And quite honestly, I can just speak from personal experience. I was bused back in the 70s under such order. So the fact that it's still happening, I know, is a concern in this community. And it's an issue that is at the forefront of our recruiting efforts.
So then to piggyback off of that, we have a 78% graduation rate of black students, but around 35-36% can read. So that's another thing that we're concerned with the superintendent, not to really push students through to have the numbers up, but to actually provide the students with the quality education. So when they do go through, they can read after graduation.
So you're talking about a superintendent who has the knowledge and instructional practices in order to hold the high standards. And what goes along with that too would be the willingness and ability to make sure the staff is trained in how to. So what I'll be looking for in talking to candidates is not only were you able to work in a system in which student achievement improved, which is important, but also how did you disaggregate the data to make sure all subgroups were improving?
And then know that we have
Disaggregate the data.
we have national merit scholars who are in college having to take remedial calculus classes. Like a parent emailed me. So it's not just the black students that are not getting the rigor in the quality of education. It is all our students. So we have students graduating with IB graduates and national honors, and then they go to University of Florida, not even MIT or Harvard, University of Florida, and they're taking remedial math classes, remedial chemistry, and things. And that's a blow for kids who are like valedictorian here, so that just speaks to the rigor of our curriculum as well.
Ms.
Right.
Green, what did you say was the reading? You said the graduation rate was 78%?
78%, and the reading.
That's for African Americans too.
For
Yes.
African Americans was, I don't want to say 34%.
Okay.
And I just, if you don't mind, that again, one of the things that we've heard, a theme across groups and in our interviews, is that student achievement, tapping the potential that's here, but also trying new strategies that can ensure that our pockets of success around the district are replicated, and that across the board with, and I should have said disaggregate data, that all of our subgroups are meeting our target goals as far as student improvement. And so we will be looking for superintendent candidates who have experience doing just that. And we will pry deeper than just, how are the scores in your district, but how were your scores in the district? What practices did you put in place in
Yes.
order to achieve those scores? And when you disaggregated the data, were all groups achieving at similar rates, which is the gap, the achievement gap that we always are looking to address in education. So those are the kind of questions we'll ask.
See, we really need the Black students to achieve at a higher rate in order to diminish that gap.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'll stay the same. But Frederico, there's also like 92% graduation for the entire district, and I think it's under 60% reading efficiency.
Yes,
So there's
yes, I remember
still
that.
Well,
Yeah.
when you say graduation, I think also you got to keep in mind the cohort graduation rate, cohort, from 9th through 12th, and I think that's where a major discrepancy, because at that 12th grade year, in the last one I saw, the white student was at 10.10%, 0.1%, and the black student was at 3.9% dropout rate. We're talking about the cohort dropout rate, yes. And that is an area that, even though you're getting a higher graduation rate, but then that dropout rate it's astronomical different.
There's the discrepancy between the two.
Discrepancy, sure.
And just from my perspective, I'm always looking for superintendents who dig into that type of data, superintendent candidates who dig into that type of data and then make recommendations for improvement. So I can't guarantee you that they will have dealt with a dropout issue, but I can guarantee you that we will be looking for people who have experience, not just saying, oh, our graduation rate is great, but looking at which groups are graduating at what rates and where the gaps are. But then take that one step further, talk about transparency, talk about that issue, and then try to get people united in moving forward and making a plan for improvement. And that's the part, those are the accomplishments that I'm going to be looking for when I talk to candidates. Not just saying, yeah, we know there's a problem, but okay, now who did you bring together to work on that problem? And how did that help you? Because, we can sit in a back room and say, well, we'll try this and we'll try that, but maybe getting people who care about that problem together in order to try to make solutions happen.
I was thinking early when you were talking about the community, and I see one of the greatest pictures to really define us
Okay?
is tonight at a football game, Friday night football game. We have over 6,000 attendance on an average of every football game. Right now, we are in the process of breaking the record in Florida for the most regular season win in the history of the state.
Wow.
We're on the verge of breaking that. And you go there and you'll see all us at the football game cheering these players on. And yet, we haven't had a black quarterback in 60 years.
That's it. Well, and
Now, isn't that interesting?
well, when you were talking about that too, though, you say there's 6,000 people who show up.
They don't mind. I mean, we've sent blacks to the pros. We got many blacks they've sent to the pros, et cetera. Like she's saying, many of them go through school, and some of them can't read. Yeah, you're 100% right.
Wait, Tyree?
that couldn't read.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we had-
But I will say, though, what I would take from that anecdote that you were describing is that you have a community who gathers together on a regular basis in order to achieve a goal, which is to win and to support your team. I'm saying I'm going to be looking for a superintendent who will bring people together on some of the tough educational issues in that way, define a goal, and then utilize the talent in the community to help achieve it.
I wanted to address I'm sorry, I'm a control freak.
That's okay. Bring it back.
Give me a microphone, I start running the meetings.
No, that's
But
totally
we
fine.
had talked about sustaining strengths.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the things you had mentioned. And to do that is to continue to add programs
Mm-hmm.
that are going to help our students, which I already see the current board starting to work on
Mm-hmm.
under Dr. Moxley's, and hopefully we'll continue under the new superintendent. They've been doing a lot of surveys and so forth, trying to, now they're actually trying to accumulate, or trying to, what do you call it?
Students were talking about that
Trying
too.
to figure out what to do with that, and
Data.
how to utilize that data. And it also goes back to, 'cause sustaining those strengths means coming up with actual goals, actual realistic things and going back to an issue that's dear to my heart, issues that will close the achievement gap and address those kind of issues. Because if you don't, if you just give it token word of mouth, you're not going to sustain any strengths. It's going to remain a burden over this district's head. And it affects, you think of all these students, hell, you take a good percentage of these African-American students or Latino students, and you show an improvement in their achievement, that affects the whole school district.
Oh, we celebrate,
That-
yes,
absolutely.
absolutely.
And so when I see those numbers so low, so frighteningly low, that has to be addressed. And again, that's part of sustaining the strengths. We've got a committee in place that has been charged with some good goals. But they need that information, they need that support. Otherwise, it's just like a lot of other committees that were formed but never utilized, I wanted to respond to Mr. Stewart's comments earlier, because there were some very, very important, you talked about, I'm going to use it as a quote, as a matter of fact, that if you were to bring an African-American in here, he'd get his head chopped off. That can happen because, as you mentioned, people are afraid of change, are resistant to it. But one of the things that again, what I'm looking at is sustaining strengths, is any administrator that comes in will bring in a team that they can work with, that will help them, change the culture, change, the direction. And so I'm a little bit less, I have a good friend up north in Michigan who's going through exactly what you're talking about. African-American principal went into a completely 100% white school district. And he's doing a good job, but
Is there some tension?
yeah. And he's fighting for his life now. So what you're saying is a reality. But I think if the board allows them to bring in, change is tough. It always hurts. It's always painful. But after 36 years of being on this world, 53 years of being on this world, I've learned that change oftentimes, all the time, it's going to be painful. If you really want sustained change, sustained improvement, it's going to hurt.
And I agree with you. I think, though, we have in good leadership in any realm, whether it's education or business or religion, in a church, is really strong leaders will bring change, but bring change in a manner where people feel heard and where they develop a shared vision. And we might not agree every little decision. You might say, well, I didn't like that or I didn't like that. But if I know we're moving in the direction in which we all agree, then people are patient if they don't get exactly what they want over this decision. But again, it's about a leader who can understand the issues and can bring the people around the table to try to define the issue and find solutions and then move toward it. And what I'm very impressed with is the staff. with whom I've spoken all week, they are ready for someone like that. They want someone to help them define the vision, help them move forward, because there is so much potential. So I do want to make sure, though, we get to that last question.
Yeah, Ms.
'Cause
Brown, can I say one thing before we leave this? Because as a parent, and as we talking about change now, what I have witnessed this year is very disturbing to me about this district.
Okay.
In this school district. And as far as you're talking about bringing the black in as a superintendent, as a parent, I've witnessed my kids bring special report home to do work on Greek mythology. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about, extensive research work and things and on the Holocaust. And this year, August the 20th, earmarked 400 years that the first black African slave was brought to this
Jamestown.
continent. Do you know I never got one report, not one thing about black history? See,
I wasn't taught Black history either.
but see, let me say this. That's definitely one of the reasons we're having the problems with race in this country. I thought of something I used to see all the time with the rebel flag on the back of the truck. And they would have a saying over there, hell no, I ain't forgetting. They didn't forget. Because now you're seeing this thing, this racial white supremacist ideology becoming so widespread in so many areas because they didn't forget. But now, I'm saying with black history, we forgot.
And-
When they first integrated the schools, it was part of the general curriculum. A person can't know where he going if he don't know where he come from. It was A.G. Toynbee said that if we fail to study history, we are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. How can you expect us to function? And when, even during Black History Month, they didn't bring in not one assignment. They're dealing with their own history. It is an outright intent to erase it. If we taught the truth, we could close the racial gap as well as the educational gap.
Okay.
The truth is this, is reality, is that the slaves in America were not villains. They were victims. That's the truth. They didn't ask to come, and when they came, they performed what was expected. They was a slave, and they acted as a slave. The truth need be taught and throughout the curriculum, not just on February.
Oh, and
There
I'm
are
hearing you.
things, I went to school with people like Oprah Winfrey, Ed Too Tall Jones, and several.
I know, there's another meeting. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
They're
No
rushing.
problem.
But no, and I just wanted to say, Mr. Stewart, while I can't comment on what's taught, because I'm not a part of that process, what I can promise you is that when we're talking to superintendent candidates, we're going to be looking for instructional leaders who engage in those discussions on curricular issues that are brought up whether by the community or by anyone, and have those open and honest discussions about what we're teaching, when we're teaching it, why we're teaching it, and what's important. And that's what a good new superintendent is going to do.
Okay, well, I'm gonna take your word for it.
So I think maybe like some of what you're saying should be submitted in the survey, but also maybe we could talk to the board, whether individually or together, saying, hey, when you're asking these are the questions we want asked. Maybe we could do that as part of the equity committee input for this search.
I think that would be.
Also, and just to also let you know, my email is going to be on the live stream. I also have some cards here, which I'll give you. Any things specific questions that you would like me to ask candidates, please send them to me. I would be more than happy to engage candidates. The more they know about the community and what's important, the better. And lastly, if there are any names, please give them, and I didn't mean to lie, but there's one more thing after that. Okay. I need to address something that's been said a couple of times here. My job is to find someone who can address the issues that are facing the Indian River County schools. I can't, and I won't, limit that search to one type of person or one person with one background or one race. I look at everyone. But I am hearing what you said about the importance of finding someone who understands that racial tensions are a longstanding issue here in Indian River County, and they're looking for someone to pull them out of the past into the future and make sure that those issues are, and I don't know if they'll ever be fixed, but that we're working together to move to a better place.
Okay, so we're not asking you just to look at,
I know
just
that.
black candidates, but we are asking that you record the demographics of that candidate. So if they are black, we want that for the equity committee. That's a part of.
Okay, we don't ask that question on the application for obvious reasons, but anyone we bring to the board, I will have met them.
Well, we're asking that you do. Normally, they don't everywhere else, but since we're under this order, it can be, because that's what HR had to do in order for us to monitor this, and this is a part
Oh, I
that's
get
gonna
what
be
you're saying.
monitored.
Okay,
Yeah, we have.
then you and I will just talk afterward,
Okay.
because I need to figure out legally what we can ask, because in other states, it's frowned upon.
Okay.
And I want to
And
just,
it's a national search, so we'll have to figure that out.
and I just want to clarify, I am specifically asking for an African American.
I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. I have to be careful.
I'm with him.
However,
I have to be careful that I can't say that's what I'm looking for.
However, I do appreciate that there are people that are not African American that could also have those skills
Skill
to
set.
do that. I understand that. I'm just saying that it's time.
Okay.
It's
And I mean,
time,
I
and that
hear you.
needs
I
be a
just have to
strong
be
con-
careful about it.
That needs to be a strong consideration. And we also need to do our job in the community to try and help identify those people. We can't just wait for somebody else to do it for us. I learned that a long time ago. My mom always showed me that opportunity didn't come to our neighborhood, knock on our doors. We had to go out. So, but
Did you
not-
have
but
anybody in mind?
I got a few people written down. I'm gonna contact them first. but,
Okay, okay. And then you're going to have my email, so please let me know.
But yeah, definitely, I mean, and the only reason I say that is that there are non-African Americans that could do similar stuff, but the experience of African Americans in this country and in this school district are very uniquely different than
Than
Latinos,
elsewhere.
than gays, than Asian Americans, and so on and so forth. And so you really need someone who understands that. And I've been to a few board workshops where we actually got into cultural issues and things like that. And it's like, oh, we hadn't thought about that, you know.
And it's important to bring somebody who can lead them,
The way sometimes you approach a student of color, you know, it makes all the difference in the world, you know.
And that comes with training too. So I would be looking for someone who is actively involved in training sessions.
And so that's
having
it,
training
yeah.
sessions
So I
for the
didn't,
district,
I wasn't trying to say, you know, white people couldn't do that, but.
I have not.
Please write it down. And-
I have a note taker, and we
Sure.
will. Nancy is amazing. I always.
I didn't write it.
But absolutely, and you know what? We're all.
With the, you said like the professional development, there was a survey, and 60% of the teachers said that it wasn't effective under, not Moxley, but under the previous superintendent. So that is a huge area, and classroom management and diversity and
Education.
inclusion is what is contributing to,
The
to like
ongoing
our
problems,
high
right?
Referral rates that we have here.
Sorry,
Yeah,
it should be on you.
that's okay.
It's been such a pleasure to meet you all. I know we have to stop because of the time, but I am going to, I have more cards back here, so I'll hand one here and then I'll get you some more. But please email me with any candidates who you would like me to reach out to. Again, I don't give them your names. I just say during our community session, someone mentioned that you would be a good fit for the Indian River School District. Would you invite them to apply? Okay? Thank you.
And I think you should maybe,
welcome.
maybe get with Human Resources on how to track.
I will, I
Yeah,
will.
'cause I think they did
Something
so
with that, okay. And I will make sure, especially if that's ordered through that's important. 'Cause we want to make sure to not be a hindrance to that effort. You're welcome.
Now, you're talking about the human resource